Ryan,
Tony,
And
Crystal.
we can't guarantee that you're gonna look great, but if you wanna stay in shape, well, you better hit the GymWits.
That's right, man. You tell 'em.
welcome to the GymWits podcast. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, aka Chef Sonic.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, aka Tips with Tony.
And we are the GymWits. So I saw. Have you guys been watching anything Netflix interesting? Any good movies?
All American. It's very good. I'm addicted.
Never heard of it.
It's it's turning into a soap opera. It's getting a little bit out of hand, but it's basically based off of a true story of a high school football player who grows up in kind of like the ghetto of LA and then ends up going to Beverly, and just it's like all about like rich versus poor, black versus white. It's really, 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 really good. So I'm almost done. I'm on season 2. I'm towards like the last few episodes.
Yeah. Have you watched anything, Justin?
Not too much. I finally got around to watching the show Shameless. I've been enjoying it. I don't watch too much television, so
Shameless is really good. It's like every season gets a little more over the top.
Yeah,
and then it just kind of got to the point where it's like, all right, I'm good.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through all 10 seasons. So.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Funny fact, I heard about Shameless like a while ago when it like first come out, and so I thought I'd give it a try. So like for a few episodes, I gave it a shot, and I remember saying to my friend, and I was like, it's okay, and then I like described one of the girls having like blonde hair, and he's like, no, she has brown hair, and then we realized that I was watching the UK version.
Oh, okay.
Which isn't as good. So if you're going to watch Shameless, I think the American version.
Yeah, no, it's good, and it's just like the characters get so kind of like just bad but it is a good show. Like the first few seasons are pretty good, but I watched. I've been watching a lot of stuff, but so a good movie that's on Netflix called The Florida Project, which is kind of like an indie movie that I would recommend if anyone, if you have a couple hours. It's like it's not really a story. It's just a woman that lives in like with her kid. It's kind of a mess, like kind of a it seems like she's probably in and out of jail and has these kids that kind of run all over the place, and it's kind of sad. It's weird because it's like this weird indie flick with like no names, and then like Willem Dafoe is like there, and I think he was nominated for an Oscar for it. But it's just really good. Kind of sad movie, but their performances are these kids, and the kids are so good, like really, really good performances by these kids that can't be more than like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. I did watch Community, which is finally on Netflix, which is great. I never watched it before. There's really fun like sitcom that was on, I think it was on NBC. Just about these people in community college, but it's by the same guy that did Rick and Morty, so it's just got kind of irreverent and crazy and all over the place, but really good. And we started watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I'm not sure if I like yet.
You've never
saw it.
What?
And I'm not sure if I like it.
What?
It's one of those. There's certain shows that like I actually The Office is a show that like I love, but it took me a little bit to get there. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I think, is the same thing. Like you kind of have to get to know the characers. Yeah. And then once you do, and it's like there's like it's like a dry humor. So hilarious. Yeah, like it depends on the type of humor you're looking for.
With It's Always Sunny, I think it's funny. I have two thoughts. One is I think if I was like 25, I would have thought it was like the funniest, most,
you're 100% correct.
Two parts.
For the game.
I think if I was 25 and it was like for its time, exactly. Like I would have thought, okay, this is like the funniest, most, they're really taking chances. It's ridiculous. But I think part of it said I'm a little bit older. But that's not fully the case, because I totally love shows that do take chances. But I think that there's just in the time since, I think comedy on TV has evolved so much that there's so many great shows like What We Do in the Shadows. I don't know if you guys watched that, but it's just so it's got that same ridiculousness, but it's just so good. Shows like Atlanta, even like before all of his stuff. Louis, as bad of a person as he might be, Louis is one of the best comedies ever. Curb Your Enthusiasm. So I feel like comedy has evolved so much that. If I'd watched it when it came
at the
out,
wrong time,
exactly. And also, I feel like I compare. It's like similar. I know that there are comparisons to Seinfeld, where you have like it's like they're just horrible people. Like there's no redeeming qualities. Like even Seinfeld, like as funny as it was, like they're not good people. And the same thing with It's Always Sunny. Like, these are awful people, but like, there's, for me, like, there's nothing redeeming. I just hate all of them. And so
that's the point.
I get that's the point. But like, even with Seinfeld, like, as bad as they were, like, you still, that you wanted to watch them, where I have a hard time. And maybe, and don't get me wrong, like, there are some funny moments. There are a couple episodes that are fantastic and great, but I think that those are few and far between for me.
You caught it at the wrong time. Yeah, it's the sort of thing you needed to watch when there wasn't anything else like it, and you're younger and more sophomoric in your humor.
Exactly. Yeah.
So sorry.
And not that I'm not sophomoric in my humor. It's just that
you missed the boat. You missed.
I think I missed the boat. So like we're watching it, but then like compared to Community, which is like, obviously it's a network show, so it's a lot more sanitized. But I just feel like it's much, I guess, smarter. And so I kind of watching it at the same time, where I think Community, hit me at a better spot than like It's Always Sunny, which, like I said, if I was 25, I probably would have thought it was the best, funniest, Oh,
and it was. It was. Sorry, you're just gonna have to deal with that. I saw a movie. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It was called Border. It's a Swedish film. I think it's on Netflix, and it's pretty cool. Like, it's you guys should watch that movie. It goes in directions that you would not expect. So I very much so enjoyed watching that film. Mm-hmm.
Border. Interesting. Okay.
Swedish
show. I watched another show on Netflix, The Stranger, which is a British, like, kind of thriller.
You've been wanting to do a remake of The Stranger for a Mysterious Stranger.
The Mysterious Stranger, yeah.
Mysterious Stranger.
Yeah. When I get rich, we're gonna produce a remake. We're not a remake. We're just gonna produce The Mysterious Stranger, possibly as a musical.
All right.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right. So we gotta make that money. Anyway,
so like you always I think that you always think that of talking about the weather as small talk, as not substantive. It's sort of the thing. It's like, oh, so how's the weather outside? And people are like, rolling their eyes. Is like, oh, you have nothing better to talk about than the weather. But we find out that it's actually a lot more interesting than you might think.
Yes. So we have an interview, and it's really, really fun, wide-ranging interview. And it's the first one we've done since we've been back, and it was really, really good. I think we kind of said we were going to kind of limit the interviews to people that we really, really want to talk to, and topics that we really want to go over. And this one definitely was really good, kind of knocked out of the park for us. So without further ado, here is our interview with Sherri Pugh.
Hey everyone, we are here with Sherri Pugh. Hey Sherri, how's everything?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Can't complain. We're all hanging on pretty well, I guess. So Sherri is a meteorologist, and she's produced weather media for over 10 years, working at the Weather Channel, CNN, NBC. And last year, she moved to the West Coast and is now volunteering in fire weather at the NWCC in Portland. So we're going to find out about this whole fire weather thing, something I had no clue about before like 8 minutes ago. So I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
So Sherri, one thing we always start with is if you could share kind of a little bit before we get into the episode, just your background with nutrition and fitness and, maybe your exercise regimen or how health is important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I prepared for this. I knew it was coming because I listened to your podcast previously a lot and really enjoy it. And it's changed some of my habits as well.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you for sharing that.
My fitness background really didn't start until college. I didn't do too much before then. I dated someone who did Taekwondo. And as a result, I kind of got interested in maybe some martial arts or some kind of sport. And I ended up trying kickboxing. And I was really fortunate that the place I started with kickboxing was very focused on technique. So I had a really great base for my education in martial arts. And from there, I was immediately hooked. It's like I never knew I had legs before. I started kicking everything and my friends and buildings and everything. I just kicked everything. I stuck with it for a while, kind of in a fitness kickboxing kind of regimen, and continued when I moved to Atlanta to work at the Weather Channel. Kept that up when I moved to New York as well. And I always did fitness kickboxing, and I decided to give a try to Muay Thai. I always thought Muay Thai was going to be too challenging, too hard, and also take up too much time. As a meteorologist, I'm not 8 to 5 with weekends and holidays off. So my time gets taken a lot. And I made that leap into Muay Thai. And it was really hard, just like I thought it would be. And it took up all my time, basically because I got so hooked to it that I wanted to do it more. So I ended up in a situation where I would take like 2 classes a night for at least 3 nights a week and really loved it, enjoyed it so much. Currently, I'm doing a kind of a kickboxing class here in New York that's also a strength training, which is really interesting. Here in Portland, I should say. It's terrific. I love it a lot. And so that's kind of my fitness background.
Cool.
Some things I've learned from you guys. I'm a vegetarian. And you guys mentioned some previously about kind of weight loss and vegetarians taking protein. I was like, oh, protein. So I've added protein to my breakfast oatmeal every day as a result of this podcast.
Awesome.
That's
I'm
great.
happy to hear that.
And you were a student at the gym that I teach at, which
yes, that's how I met you.
Yeah. And
I take your class, and it's very hard.
And it's as chaotic as it was, or when we were still open, things
Back
were
in
as
the days.
chaotic as they were. But yeah, I'm glad that you found, because that's always a challenge is when people leave New York. If you're doing Muay Thai, it's hard to find places that are good, like that can at least not even just match the keep you engaged. And so I'm glad you found somewhere that you're happy with in Portland, because that can be a little bit of a challenge, like depending on where you are in the country.
Challenge. Absolutely. And I tried several gyms to kind of find my fit. That's the thing with martial arts, especially. You kind of want something that you're happy to go to, that fits your style. And that can be really challenging because there's lots of different gyms with lots of different options.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's and that's one of the good things about training, is that there are so many different things that you kind of take a little bit from. You take something from one person, and then you kind of, that's part of your arsenal, and then you take it somewhere else. So it's always fun.
Yes.
So now tell us a little bit about your kind of professional background.
So I've wanted to be a meteorologist since the 5th grade. I knew at a young age that meteorology was for me. I went to NC State in Raleigh, North Carolina, and got my bachelor's of science in meteorology. From that point, I worked at a state climate office for a while doing data with them, which was a really great background in data and how, weather towers and stations work. From there, I moved to the Weather Channel, where I worked overnights, weekends, part-time for a while, because I wanted to make that leap into television media. And I worked overnights for about 7 or 8 years, working for the morning TV program, because all that prep comes before the morning show. So I had, went in at 11 p.m., went in at 2 a.m. for a while, for a long time. And then I moved into NBC, where I moved for a nightly show. And so I was able to have more of a daylight when I was awake. That was quite a change. And then I've been doing that television media role. The weather producer's role is to make the graphics. So you'll see, the cold front that's going across the country kind of thing. That's me. I'm making that. As well as we're putting together stats. We're putting together forecast tidbits, and we're putting together a forecast to help with that on-air talent as well. And then we decided to make the move. And we're here on the West Coast now, where I've done some things and spoken with the media as well. But I got really into fire weather. I was able to volunteer at the NWCC. It's kind of a Washington and Oregon organization, and they help with fire resources around the region.
Cool. So just to backtrack a little bit, is what is a meteorologist? We all think of it as, layman is the person who predicts the weather on TV, but I'm sure it's not that simple.
Oh, sure. It is a massive science with so many facets, because you're talking about marine meteorology, tropical meteorology, severe and tornado meteorology, and for the plains of the United States and things like that. Winter weather. It is a huge facet that impacts people's everyday life. It's pretty hard not to be impacted by weather. You'd pretty much have to live underground for weather to not influence your life. So meteorology, it actually stands for hydrometeorology. Hydro is water, and then meteor is kind of something in the air, and then ology, study of. So the idea is we're studying things in the air, moisture and where it's going, and the weather systems that come with it.
Sweet.
So what are some of the challenges as a meteorologist with kind of making kind of accurate predictions? Because I know, like I find that thing, it tends to be much more accurate than maybe the kind of general conception is of it. But like, what are the challenges to making predictions, and why can there be situations where there's one expectation of, like, I don't know, torrential downpours, and then it's like a bright, sunny, hot day? Like, just maybe you can go into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Forecasting is quite a challenge. There is so much involved depending on what kind of weather you're talking about as well. Are we talking about snow? Are we talking about predicting the development of tornadoes? Are we talking about damaging straight line winds? Are we talking about hurricanes? And those are just the big severe things. There's also something as simple as measuring when the cloud marine layer is going to move into Portland, Oregon, and when the sun's going to come out. Small little things like that as well. There's so much that goes into it. You've got topography of the land. You've got a lot of ingredients. If you think about it, the atmosphere is kind of like an ocean. The thing above us is not just this thin little layer right here where we live. It's pretty high, and it's got a lot of weather going on. So things that happen higher up in the atmosphere can affect what's happening lower here at the surface as well. So you've got a lot to predict. It's kind of like predicting where the ocean is going to go. So we are taking on a heck of a challenge. With your forecast models, you're trying your best to take the ingredients that you see right now, all the observations, all those weather stations, and you put it into a model that takes calculations and tries to go into the future. And those calculations, once you add in a little bit of error, the temperature here wasn't quite measured correctly, or there's not enough data, teeny little errors just expand over time. So chaos is a big deal in meteorology forecasting. That's one of the reasons why we can have a forecast that's better maybe 24 or 48 hours out as opposed to like 7 days or 10 days out. And we're doing all kinds of modeling. Models are never perfect. They're close to perfect sometimes, and sometimes they're really, really off. So we're always looking at what kind of accuracy we can get out of them to tell the forecast story. So models are never perfect. They're never 100%, but sometimes they're going to give us some help to tell us where the forecast is going. So that's kind of the modeling world. And there's so many interesting things about modeling. There's things like ensemble modeling, where you take a whole bunch of model runs, you add little errors and see what happens. There's things like the national blend of models, where we're blending different types of models. And there's different types of models because they're calculated different ways. Some look at different physics. Some look at different observations that go into the model. So that's why we have all these different types of models run by different countries as well. And they fund them in different ways. Sometimes the model has a lot of money. Sometimes the model is free, and maybe that free model doesn't have quite the support. So there's a whole science in just the forecasting.
It's so funny, the things that either you take for granted or you just don't know. Like when you're watching the weather forecast, either on a local or national news broadcast, you just never that there's something that goes into it, but you just never you can't imagine all of what you just said. And I'm sure that's barely scratching the the surface of the iceberg.
Are there particular parts of the country or of the world that are of more interest to like a meteorologist because of the variety of maybe the different variables involved and the different do you as a meteorologist, do you prefer a place that has more chaos and more things, or some place that's more stable?
It's true. It kind of depends on, it's very opinion based. I grew up in North Carolina. We had a lot of thunderstorms, a lot of hurricanes. And here I am on the West Coast, where everyone doesn't really care that a new hurricane is developed, but I'm, going crazy about it. So it can be very opinion and what kind of where you grew up and that kind of thing. New Yorkers are really looking at nor'easters, which are an incredible storm system that's a coastal system that is pretty unique to that area. And actually, even tornadoes are kind of unique to the United States in our number of tornadoes. We have a lot of tornadoes here because we have a unique setup where we have Gulf moisture coming in at the surface. You have a different direction coming over the Rockies, and some of those come together to produce a lot of tornadoes here, more than a lot of places in the rest of the world, as a matter of fact. So a lot of tornadoes occur right here. And if you grew up loving Twister or you grew up chasing those in that tornado environment, then you really have an affinity for it. There's things like
funny. I was just thinking of that movie. So sorry.
Twister, absolutely.
But a Wizard of Oz.
Exactly, Wizard of Oz as well. And then I was going to mention that places like people think that Southern California is not interesting. Oh, it's just 72 all the time. But there's this interesting marine layer that's coming in and out and taking the sun away. There's insane Santa Ana winds that cause crazy heat changes and fire weather there as well. So, each place is relative.
So you mentioned fire weather.
Ryan, hold on, Ryan. I'm gonna do a sidebar before we lead up to this new topic, because you mentioned the movies and whatnot. So I'm always curious: are there misconceptions or things that you see in a movie or a TV show about weather or tornadoes, hurricanes that are just not accurate to that, or sort of common mistakes or misnomers that writers will put into movies or shows or whatnot?
I do not recommend watching Twister with a meteorologist. Just don't do it. Just say no. We are constantly, I call out video games for what is that? That's not. And movies that depict meteorologists a lot, where they're, the terminology will just be wild. Just don't watch Twister with a meteorologist.
Fair enough. Brian, what were you going to say?
So you mentioned fire weather. So can you talk about that? It is such an interesting thing, and especially with what's been going on of late. I think it definitely adds a layer of insight that I just never really considered, but it sounded really interesting when we kind of talked about it a little bit. And I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, absolutely. So fire weather is a big deal here on the West Coast. I'm watching it, especially coming into the next season, because we're having some dry conditions. It's raining right now in Portland, Oregon. No surprise. But we've had a little bit of a more dry April, and it gives me concerns for our season ahead. It's kind of uncertainty. It's not as certain that we're going to have a crazy season. We could get some rain moved in, and that's something we're really going to watch for. Fire weather is so important here on the West Coast. We have a lot of timber. We have homes near that timber, and it's important to be able to track the weather that could spark fires. Where I volunteer, we're kind of a little bit of a higher order level. At the local level, if there's a fire, firefighters will go and they can put it out. If they get a lot of what we call initial attack, so they have a lot of fires and things are starting to get a little more out of control, or they may have significant large fires, so they're dealing with larger fires, they may need some help and some resources. And that's where we can step in and move things around to try to help them out. We can also help out other regions of the country. If, for example, Alaska is having a bad fire season, we can move resources to them. If, say, the Northwest is not doing too bad. If we are looking at the weather ahead and we see lots of cool and rainy conditions, we can move things. If we are looking hot and dry and windy, then we may try to keep our things at home because we want to watch for our fire weather. We're even able to send resources to Australia, who had really bad fire conditions. And as we're looking at climate change, this story is not going to, it's going to become more and more important for us. It's going to be important to watch fire weather with a warming climate. It's going to change where we not necessarily have a fire season, but it extends further out and could even be year long.
So can you maybe explain a little bit on why climate change, like the effect that climate change has on this issue, and why it'll make things worse?
Yeah,
and maybe
absolutely.
if you have to give a little, the cliff notes on climate change, and maybe for some of our listeners, but yeah, I think it's really important to understand how it does have an effect on all of this.
Yes, absolutely. With climate change is global warming. Some people will say, why did that kind of change in naming? It's still the same thing. What's important to know about warming Earth is that it impacts so many other weather types. It's a domino effect. And that's why climate change kind of encompasses all those changes so that we don't forget about things that happen because of a warming Earth. For example, tides change. With warming temperatures, warm air kind of holds is a bit of a misnomer, but it holds more moisture. And that's why storm systems can dump more rain because of that warmer air. It has more moisture available to it. So it changes all of these different things. Nothing is black and white in weather. Everything is kind of a shade of gray. One thing impacts another thing. When Superstorm Sandy hit, it became a snowstorm as it moved inland and had strong impacts. So, it's not just one thing, it's always several things. And that's what's important about climate change, is that it has so many impacts. It's impacting sunny day flooding at coastal places where the tides are coming in and flooding, even though it's not a rain event. And it's impacting fire weather because it's increasing those ingredients that already make for a bad fire season. So droughts can be even drier and more extreme in that kind of event.
So with everything going on right now, with a lot of people not being, they're more home, they're not driving their cars, transportation is down, just a lot of that stuff. Have you noticed, or is there a prediction to notice that could, is that what was affecting global warming? Will it be slowed now, or maybe just air quality? Could you speak to that a little bit?
There's at least a very temporary change. For example, people are taking beautiful pictures of Los Angeles right now that are crystal clear, and it's amazing. So we are seeing those changes happen. The worry and the concern is what happens next. Do all those things that caused the pollution turn back on, and do they turn back on more? Because we're trying to make up for what has happened during this event. So there's a lot of concerns. And one of that concern too is that we're really focusing on our biggest problems right now, so that climate change and the pollution may take a back seat to, our concerns, which is totally understandable.
Right.
But we do have to, we have to plan for everything.
Right.
So I was wondering if coming out of this, let's say things get back to normal fairly soon, if maybe there was government incentives to have a work from home day where basically almost everyone who, unless you have, and there's a place where you physically have to be there, everything was shut down. So there was it was similar to what it is now. And we did that one day a week. Would that make a big difference, a positive change for the environment, for the air, global warming?
It's possible. It's the thing where that was kind of a budget trick. Like if you're budgeting, you think there's this one day I won't spend money, but then do you end up spending money on the side days beside it? So sometimes it could be a little bit more of long-term changes that can have a stronger impact.
Cool. All right. So when it comes to the climate, what this is something that is an area that you can talk about. Do you feel like we're past the point of no return, or how bad is it? How if we wanted to avoid kind of catastrophe, what would we need to do, or where is the kind of science on that?
Absolutely. So some things are already kind of set. Yeah. For example, the ocean is a huge absorber of a lot of the CO2 that we're dealing with. The oceans have already taken in a lot of that, and that's going to take a really long time to change and to move around. So that's already happened. Some warming is already occurring. We're seeing a lot of warming at the poles, and we're already witnessing a lot of that as well. So some of it will happen. It's kind of a feedback as well. So it can kind of keep making itself worse to a degree. So it's that kind of feedback as well. So we're already dealing with some of those impacts. And I mentioned the sunny day flooding, it's already happening. There are some things that certainly we go ahead and try to change policy that will help the climate change and will help assist us. That involves a lot of lawmakers and politics, for example. That's really one of the front lines to changing climate, to assisting with global warming and things like that, is that kind of level. We can try things at home. You're picking a car that has better emissions. You're watching your wood burning, things like that. Those have some impact. They're maybe not as strong as changing policy. Policy is probably the biggest way to help with climate change.
So sort of speaking of that, while it shouldn't be, it is a political issue. And I'm just curious that, I'm not going to say who, but generally there are deniers of climate change, and they will say that there is scientific evidence that says climate change is not happening. I'm just curious, what do they claim that scientific evidence is that climate change does not exist?
So from the studies I have seen, it is not necessarily if you tell someone and explain to them how climate change works. I can do that. I understand how it works. I could sit in a room and just give that statistic. That's not the determination. The determination tends to be politics. It's your political group. And that is probably the number one that points to where you stand. And I would send you over to another scientist, Catherine Hayhoe, who has done some amazing, she does a lot of presentations, a lot of work putting together that study information. She's a really excellent resource, and I follow her and really enjoy listening to her information. And she does some series on YouTube as well, which is really lovely to see. So yeah, we can kind of explain how it works, and it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now, do you find, so I guess that's kind of part of my next question. I find that in general, science literacy is not very high in this country, but I guess it's not even a science literacy thing. It's really just political. Like, even if you are scientifically
That's
literate,
what it sounds like you're saying.
you're still
exactly.
going to
It's how
find
it
a way to be on your, if whatever your side is, and you're gonna.
But that's something we do as meteorologists that's important. We try to make sure that our forecast and the information we give is very clear. You know, not everyone can find their location on a map. So we want to make sure that we're describing dangers and things like that to health and weather and property as well, so that it's best understood. It's something that the National Weather Service has been working toward a lot lately, making sure our message is understood. We've brought in a lot of social scientists so that, you know, it's not just us weather nerds talking together back and forth. It is making sure that our message gets received by someone. You know, not everyone understands the meteorological terms, and we want to make sure that we're clear so that we're giving that threat and explaining those impacts. That's something forecasters are working toward.
So I guess we can probably spend a whole episode talking about it, so I won't ask too much, but are you optimistic that there's a way to get through to people? Because I feel like and we're even seeing it kind of with the COVID-19 epidemic, that, you know, for a lot of people, if they don't see it, if it's not happening to them, they tend to not care about it but especially with climate change, it seems like it's one of those things that it will be catastrophic, and then it'll be too late for us to really do anything about it. So are you optimistic that there's a way to get to people before it's too late? I guess if not, then. Well, yeah, I don't know. I guess just, are you optimistic that there's a way to get through to people?
We'll certainly try. And that's actually part of, you know, as a meteorologist, we're not always climatologists. Mm-hmm. But meteorologists, when you turn on your TV and watch that meteorologist at 6 o'clock or whatever time it is, you may have some trust in them because there's someone you see constantly. And you just understand their message to you. And so that's some of the reason that we've been doing a little bit of that climate science in some meteorology segments, so that you're able to kind of understand yourself, to make sure that you get it. And it's trusted sources. That's the most important. And as we were talking about forecasting and how some forecasts can be, you know, really challenging, it's turning to a trusted source. And that's even has to do with your app, because people look at weather apps a lot. Every day.
Every morning.
And the question is, what is your app saying? You know, where's your app getting its forecast data from? Is it grabbing it from raw data from a model? Is someone interpreting that data for you to make it more accurate? Are they using national blend of models or something else? What does your app, where does that data come from? And it doesn't really tell you. You really have a hard time. You can't necessarily look through your app and say, where is this coming from? And that's why we turn to the National Weather Service a lot. Those are offices that are local with meteorologists that are looking at all the elements in that region. Mm-hmm. So they can give those warnings, watches, and alerts that can help keep you safe.
So I have a left field question. Every year around, May, I want to say September, you'll hear you hear a number of people at some different point saying, well, the Farmer's Almanac says that the weather is going to be miserable. You know, this winter's going to be terrible, or it's going to be great. So I guess my question is there any validity to it? And how do they determine that the weather is going to be, this is supposed to be a miserable winter, and this is probably one of the best winters we've ever had. But yeah, just always curious about that. Whenever I hear the Farmer's Almanac, I'm like, it can't be true. But yeah.
You're right. It is not true.
Oh, okay.
Do not Farmer's Almanac. If you want to look at more of a long term, we have in NOAA, there is something in the United States here. We have something called the CPC. It's the Climate Prediction Center. And they give forecasts for a month, 2 months, 3 months out. They're an excellent resource. Their forecast, they're doing the best they can for sure. it's a challenge to forecast that far out. Let me also mention that climate models that we're using in climate change are very different from forecast models. There are very different parameters that are going in, very different scale. So you may go, hey, the weather models aren't great for 7 to 10 days out. How can a climate model be good for years in advance? It's very different modeling. Also very different modeling for COVID-19. We're looking at modeling people, and that is very different than the calculations of the physics of weather. So modeling is a general term that has a lot of different things going into it.
I was going to ask a couple things, kind of maybe just how weather affects kind of your day-to-day. Some people I know, like one of my clients, and Ryan, you said earlier, I didn't even know. Apparently Ryan has asthma. I didn't know that. I've known him for a few years now. One thing my client will usually say to me is like, she'll look at the air quality that day. And then, normally if she would have went for a run, she chooses to do her workout inside. So I think also too, everyone, asthma affects them differently. So even that, and then even my dad will say like, oh, it's going to rain and I have arthritis in my knee. Like, how much validity is that? And like, what should we be looking for those people who do have those conditions?
Sure, absolutely. It is important to look at your daily forecast, to look at those things that impact you, and to look at if there is a threat of weather that needs to be alerted, such as a warning, an advisory, or a watch. Those are some of the things to look at every day. There's several parameters to look at. You may want to look at depending on if you're dealing with arthritis or if you're dealing with asthma. Air quality is really important. There's a lot of air quality organizations across the United States that report air quality for the day and for a little bit into the future. That's really important if you have respiratory problems. And air quality can be smoke, can be particulate matter. You're also dealing with things like pollen. So if you have allergies, it's something important to monitor for your day ahead so that when you're outside, or even if you're outside for just a little bit and then you go inside, that you're aware of what's going on with that. As far as alerts and advisories, the National Weather Service puts out advisories and watches and warnings so that you will stay protected. And it starts with the headline, but moves into more details. So if you look at your alert, if you say, oh, I have a severe thunderstorm watch, what does this mean? There'll be more details in the watch that tell you what kind of weather to expect, what kind of timing to expect as well, and what kind of actions you might need to take to keep yourself safe, to keep property safe, and to keep everyone aware of that weather going on. Mm-hmm. So there's some of the daily things that you want to look at: air quality, what kind of alert advisory is going on as well.
So another off the wall question. People say that animals, birds, dogs can predict the weather, right? Like if there's going to be some sort of hurricane, like birds will fly somewhere else. Like, have you ever been asked this before? And do we know if there is any truth to it?
Not the groundhog. The groundhog's wrong. Calling out that rodent right now. So not the groundhog. My wife's tale is about cows. So if a certain number of cows are laying down, it's going to rain. If a certain number of cows are standing up, it's going to be sunny. Or sometimes they face away from the wind. So you can tell the wind direction by which way a cow is facing, things like that. Some of it certainly has truth into it. Nature is going to be connected to nature as well. So some of it has truth, not the groundhog. Groundhog's wrong.
Okay.
What are some of the true ones? Like, which are some of the situations where animals do have kind of a connection to the weather that maybe we're not equipped with the sensory mechanisms for it?
So
you're
crickets?
Not equipped with sensory mechanisms.
Yes.
Speak for yourself.
Me, natural. Crickets measure temperature. So the speed a cricket is chirping measures temperature. You can calculate it.
Oh, wow.
So that's one example.
Well, that makes sense. I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, but in the summer, there's a lot more crickets because it's probably hotter. Is that why?
And they do, and they'll crick faster if it's temperature is warmer.
Oh, that is so interesting. I love fun facts.
There's an equation for it.
Wow.
It's funny now. It
Wait,
makes
can
sense
we
'cause, like, when-
can we predict this I want to know. I want to pretend that I am a meteorologist and I'm going to tell my family what the temperature is going to be tomorrow based off of cricket noises.
Sure, absolutely. And I mean, you've heard the old red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. Red sky at night, sailors delight. That's truthful because it has to do where the sun is setting and where the sun is rising. And weather typically moves kind of from west to east. When weather is moving the other way from the east, it's usually bad news. East wind. An east wind waits for no man, they say. It's usually bad news when it's coming from the other direction. It's like a hurricane coming from the other direction, that kind of deal.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to have. I've had reptiles over the years, and the crickets, and it kind of makes sense now. The amount of chirp, because one of them had like a tank that like would need to be on one end of the tank was like up to 110 degrees, and they would chirp a lot, and it was really annoying keeping crickets in that situation.
Oh God, now I'm thinking about them.
They're
really
cold-blooded. So things like heat index, when you talk about heat index, they're not affected. Heat index is actually only virtual. It's not actually measured. It's only calculated. So there's no heat index thermometer. It just measures the temperature, measures the moisture, and it's calculated based on what we think a person with warm blood would respond to those kinds of conditions. Heat index is really important, though, because you can have extreme heat indexes, and that's really important to your health. If you're trying to run in that, that's really dangerous. If your gym is, I don't know, a few feet underground and it's really warm in there in the summer and you're taking Ryan's class and you're going to die anyway, you're really thinking about that and what you're wearing and things like that. As also when you walk outside and it still feels pretty miserable, you're thinking about your hydration and things like that as well.
So actually,
that's a good point.
We haven't. It's been so interesting just talking about weather. We haven't talked much about weather related to exercise. What what tips are there for people that are looking to exercise? Whether in outdoors, you'd think more weather related, but you do have situations, like indoor in a basement with bad circulation. So yeah, if you can give us some tips on exercising, and maybe if you're working out outdoors, what things you do want to be aware of when it comes to the weather.
Yes, things to look for. And for example, my gym here is kind of more of a warehouse. So whatever the temperature is outside is very influenced inside, which is kind of nice because in the summer, I'm able to work out in a warm environment, kind of gets me ready for being outside in the summer. And in the cold, I'm working out in some colder temperatures. So it's helping me there as well. I kind of enjoy it. Things to look out for, we mentioned advisories. There's heat advisories and excessive heat warnings. There's also for cold. There's those kinds of alerts and advisories for cold as well. So those are important, whether you're trying to be outside or even just temporarily outside or in a building that's really influenced by the outside. Moisture is really important as well. You can feel that muggy temperature and you want to know whether you're going outside and it's going to feel okay or if it's going to be kind of a miserable, muggy humidity. Relative humidity is relative. It's relative to the temperature and some other things. It's not necessarily a measure of moisture. So if it's cold outside, you can have a high relative humidity because relative to the temperature, that's a lot of moisture. But it's not really, you don't walk outside and go, oh, it's muggy out here and it feels uncomfortable. A better measure is dew point temperature. Dew point temperature is a temperature by itself, just temperature. It's not relative to anything. And I'm going to speak in Fahrenheit. I realize you guys have some international listeners, but I'm going to stick with Fahrenheit for my description. When you look at things like the dew point, when it starts moving into the 50s, for example, it's starting to feel pretty uncomfortable outside. It's getting closer. By the time you're in the 60s, that is definitely humid and uncomfortable. You'll have dew points also reaching the 70s. That's what my grandma would say, the air feels close. That is air you can wear. It is that level of discomfort. So looking at the dew point for your day can be a really good measure of your discomfort that you might feel outside, or if that air is making its way inside, what it'll feel like there as well. So dew point is an excellent measure, as well as looking at those alerts so that you're staying safe, looking at those temperature extremes from heat index or wind chill. Keep in mind things like heat index and wind chill, because they are virtual, they're only affecting human beings, like warm-blooded human beings. They don't affect your car. So heat index is not a measure on your car, or wind chill is not a measure on like the pipes of your house if you're looking for, freezing and that kind of thing. It only impacts you.
Right.
Interesting. Is there a difference in like how someone would hydrate in like a I don't know if you know this part. I'm curious. Like if it's like a super muggy day and they decide to go for a run anyway, or even a really, really cold day too, and they decide to go for a run and they have like issues now with their lungs and stuff. I'm just wondering if there's any sort of changes someone should implement during those times.
Sure, absolutely, especially with the heat, because it's affecting how you sweat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's changing how you feel your sweat. For example, I went to it's Mesa Verde in Colorado. Fantastic place, very dry. So my sweat would evaporate quicker, which was nice. It helped to keep me cooler, but I would not realize that I was getting hot because I didn't have that usual level of sweat. So I thought, oh, I'm doing okay. And I didn't hydrate as much as maybe I needed to because I thought, well, I'm not sweating. But it turns out it was a different kind of climate. And so my sweat was reacting differently. And that's actually how heat index is measured. It's a measure of moisture and it's a measure of temperature. And I'd say measured, it's calculated is what I should say. The heat will evaporate the sweat off your skin and you feel a little cooler. If there's a lot of moisture, there's not as much evaporation. So that sweat stays on your skin and you don't get the cooling effects. And then you guys would know a little bit more about what kind of water to take in versus like a Gatorade or what additives need to be added to that water. You guys would know a little bit more about that than I would.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, okay. That's, I guess my main point was that chances are you'll probably need to hydrate a little bit better, even though you don't feel the sweat coming off of you. So that's, yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for clarifying.
So one thing we've been discussing here in New York for a while now, and I wonder if it's climate change related or if we're just being strange, cynical New Yorkers. We say that that we don't have seasons anymore. Basically, we don't have spring, and we do have fall, but like spring is gone. It's basically winter, and then you have a few days where it's like pleasant, and then boom, we're in summer. Is there any validity to that? I mean, is that a climate change thing, or do we have are we just like being weird and say that it hasn't changed?
It's just New Yorkers.
Okay.
It's just New Yorkers. And in past, you guys have really enjoyed talking about blizzard conditions. And I thought, I wish I could talk to you about blizzard conditions too. Because a blizzard condition is a very specific definition. It's very scientific. Some of the terminology in meteorology is almost medical. You know, in terms of medical can mean very specific things. Same thing in meteorology. A blizzard has to have the following conditions. The wind has to be gusting 35 miles per hour, or frequent wind speed at least, frequent gusts, for 3 hours. And the visibility has to drop below a quarter of a mile. So those are the terms for blizzard. It is nothing to do with temperature, which is interesting. And also, it doesn't have to be snowing from the sky. It could be snow on the ground that's blowing around and causing those conditions. So a blizzard is a very specific condition. So some people say, oh, it's a blizzard outside. And I think, no, it's
Nope.
that is not a blizzard.
I love that.
So, and now I got flamed for saying this once, and I had no clue whether or not I was saying. I was just saying it to say it. Is there any truth to the idea it's too cold to snow?
So I mentioned that warmer air holds more moisture. Like it's not the best wording, but it basically holds more moisture.
Yeah.
So the reverse, cold air tends to be dry. It holds less moisture. So it can kind of snow with any temperature if you have the moisture in there, but it is less moist. As a matter of fact, when you look at the poles, it doesn't snow that much there. It's cold, and the snow is just already there. They don't get tons and tons of snow. They get some snow, but it may not be as much as you might imagine that the poles would get. You think, oh, it's always snowing at Christmastown at the North Pole, but maybe not necessarily.
Awesome. Oh, sorry. No, I feel like we should ask this question, and we don't know if you know the answer.
That was actually I was going to ask that.
Brand new virus, but we have heard that that the coronavirus potentially the rate in infection might slow down in warmer weather, in warmer temperatures. Have you heard that, read about that? What could you tell us about that?
I think we're not entirely sure yet. there's so much to study about this virus and its impacts on us. So we're not entirely sure yet. Some other things do change with the temperatures, and some other viruses do have that impact. Flu kind of changes, and also contagion can change a little bit as well. Just because, in cold weather, we're all inside and near each other. We're not social distancing in cold weather. We're packed in the subway and near each other, and you pick the middle seat because if two people beside you are warm, or at least I used to when I lived in New York. So we're not sure yet. Some studies are definitely, everyone's working toward this information. So I've seen kind of differing information coming out so far. I don't think we're quite sure yet. I think we still need to kind of prepare.
So when we started, you mentioned you love talking about, was it radar? Okay. I just am interested. Like I have no other interest except that you sounded really interested about it. So yeah.
Sure. Radar is amazing. It's just, and I love technology. Little, like as meteorologist, I just got a new tiny little camera, like a little camera that I have pointing out my window, and I just love it. I'm going to spend all my next several days making time lapses of whatever cloud comes over Portland because I love that technology. And radar is an amazing technology. You'll see those domes out there. It's this big dome that sends a signal out that bounces off some kind of water particle and then jumps back to the dome. It does all kinds of more things now because we have dual pole. So it can jump out there and tell what kind of little droplet it is. For example, it can actually look at debris that's being put up in the air by a tornado. So that's a really interesting development with radar. So it sends a little particle out and then comes back. It does the same thing with birds and insects. It can go out and detect the little water inside a bird. It just decides it's a water droplet and come back. So we'll see these birds leaving their nest in the morning in these big concentric circles, and radar will detect it. So it's really cool like that. There's also really interesting things about the radar beam. So it can go out and hit a mountain and then bring the signal back. It can actually get bent around as it moves. And you'll have a situation, growing up in North Carolina, this was a big deal for us, where it's snowing in the upper atmosphere, but it hasn't reached the ground yet. And so you can witness this on a radar. As it starts snowing, it kind of cools as it evaporative cools, just like sweat. And so that snow level can get lower and lower. Then finally, it's snowing on the ground. So you'll see this phenomenon on radars because the beam points up as you go further out. So it'll kind of look like a donut closing in of the snow. And once it closes in, it's snowing on the ground and school's canceled. So radar is an amazing tool. We have a lot of them across the United States that help to detect weather for us. Not all of the United States is covered. A lot of it is covered, though.
Interesting. This has been so great.
Yeah,
this is such a fun, different episode.
Awesome.
I love it.
Oh, cool.
Who knew that talking about the weather could be so exciting?
Weather and health is so related. There's so many things that are connected to that, which is why I really wanted to come and talk to you guys.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this is kind of like a sidebar, but it's related, but not so much. But a lot of people have been telling me, and I know myself, even when I started working from home before this all happened, I've always worked from home. And the darker days, like they really impact your mental health, just your mood, so I think this is important just to even if maybe people haven't even been checking the weather because they figure they're not going out. Maybe they should, pay attention a little bit more and just assess how it makes you feel each day.
Yeah. And looking out your window. People are sitting a little closer to a window maybe now than they used to. A lot of weather offices don't have windows. And people think, why don't you have a window in your weather office? And that's because if there is severe weather, such as a tornado coming through, and you need to get away from the windows, you don't want to abandon your weather office.
Interesting.
So Sherri, is there any place where we can find you if you would like to, if you have social media places, like if you want people to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on the Twitter. I have a lot of weather on my Twitter. My handle is WX Sherri. So it's WX. WX is kind of a short for weather. So WX, and then my Sherri is SHERRI. I do a lot of weather there. I do a little bit of a weekly blog. It's not terrific. It's just a little national look at the weather. And what I try to do on that blog is link to the websites so that you can see, you know, not just a little line about the weather, but actually see where it comes from. So you can kind of add those links to your repertoire of the weather forecast and learn more from that as well. So that's something I do as well. And that's linked on Twitter as well.
Oh, that's okay. Great.
I post them on the Twitter so you can see them on the Twitter. Weather Twitter is an incredible resource of a lot of meteorologists. Meteorology is a team sport for sure. So we're able to come together and share a lot of information on Twitter. It has changed the landscape of weather, that we're able to share that information, get those pictures, get those videos, weather spotters, things like that. Weather Twitter is pretty amazing.
Has anyone used the name Tweather yet?
Tweather? I'm not sure yet.
That's a good idea, right?
I used to, when I worked at NBC, they would call the weather office, and I would always respond with, "Weather, this is Sherri." And so I started introducing myself to people around the office. You know, maybe a correspondent comes in from another.
So
I'd say, "Hi, I'm Weather, this
you
is
must have
Sherri."
met Al Roker then, right? Yeah. So it's funny. He's like the one celebrity. I've
many years.
Probably seen him
so fun.
10 times just riding his bike around New York. Like literally, I've seen him. Yeah, like at least 10 times but it's always on a bike riding somewhere in New York. And like, probably at least 4 or 5. I've been with my wife. I'm like, look, that's Al Roker. Why am I riding by again? Yeah.
Well, he is amazingly accessible. And I think you held tie pads for me one time, and I was like, let me tell you about Al Roker.
Well, you know,
we had a whole discussion about it.
We're going to have to get you back on to give us the dirt of what happens on news networks. Right. That's the
great story is with Al Roker's no dirt.
The funniest the funniest thing from my childhood was there was an episode of Conan O'Brien that I remember Al Roker was on where he was like, I was getting Tic Tacs. It was in his bigger phase too. He hadn't had the surgery yet. And he like fell. And I don't know why, but my brother and I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And like I read a VCR, it was like VCR at that time, and just watched it over and over and over. And I don't know why, but it's just like the funniest thing I can remember from my childhood.
He's incredibly witty and hilarious, and he sings the entire Animaniacs theme to me. And I did Roker-thon with him. So I was on a 14-hour shift, 10-hour shift. It was a long shift, running his computer. And so he would constantly say, "Sherri," and then move something around for him. Even after I left, he kept saying, "Sherri," and whoever was filling in for me just kept making the changes for his weather computer.
Awesome. Well, Sherri, thank you so much. You are amazing. You know, we really appreciate you coming on the GymWits.
Thank you. And I wanted to do this for, I guess, more than a year at this point. I really wanted to reach out. So I'm really glad I had the opportunity to be
in science because you would wear all kinds of cool shirts but I didn't know, for whatever reason, I didn't know you were a meteorologist until recently. So it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
So Ryan's petting his dog now, who looks very happy.
But she might bite in any second.
I should get another photo. I finally figured out how to screenshot on a Mac with just 3 little. This is how crazy it is that I have an online business and I learn basic technology and get all excited. So I figured out how to do this. We're going to do it one more time. Wait, now the dog's not there. Which dog is that?
This is the crazy one.
Oh, but she looks so happy.
Yeah, she's okay, right? She's been better.
Did it. I don't know if you guys could hear that click. Oh my gosh, she's so cute.
Yeah, she's adorable. It's funny. Once she gets crazy though, she you can't believe how crazy she can look. But she is an adorable little dog. Like even the vet is like she's one of the prettiest dogs she's ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, she has 2 different, both sides of her faces are 2 different colors. I don't know if that's just
the chocolate side here, and
maybe we should do a video recording so that everyone can see. Well,
it'll save it as a video.
Mm-hmm. So we might have to post a little video action.
Aww. She really is so cute. It's sad because now that she's had the surgery, she's obviously better and more well-tempered. It was just because she was in pain.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of things. Like when kids act out, it's because there's something bothering them.
Yeah. So she's good. And thankfully, because I don't know what we were gonna do if we couldn't get the behavior. I would like.
Aw.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think of the interview?
I loved it. I think it was so cool. I always love talking with people who are passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
I think it's like someone who genuinely loves what they do and is really, really brilliant at it. You could listen to them talk all day and I could have no idea what she I'm sure she could have geeked out some more and I'd have no idea what she was saying, but I'd still love it.
Yeah.
Like I'd still think it's great because I just loved her energy.
Yeah.
It was really,
No,
really
it's great
awesome.
to have that.
And we learned a lot.
Yeah, no, that's fun and great to have that excitement and means we don't have to do too much work. So that was it was great. All right, well, as usual, you can find us at thegymwits.com. We're all over the place, obviously Spotify. Now we will try to get a GymWits workout type thing, but I am going to try to get some videos up while I have time. So we'll try to do some like exercise of the week type or day.
I think people would rather
stuff.
just see videos of you and your dog.
You probably she's adorable. But yeah, you know where to find us. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, aka Chef Sonic, reminding you that truth does not sell.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.
And we are the GymWits.